Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It is currently December 7th, 2009, and this is Day 9 Daily number 31. We're going to be watching Rhett versus a very, very good Terran player. And here I am. Oh, hopefully, if the audio is behind a little bit, don't worry about it. It'll catch up real fast here, so don't be too stressed about it. So in all the listings for this, I have Rhett versus A+ Korean, and I think that he was actually an A-level Korean, but I can't have it be like Rhett versus a Korean. You know, it doesn't sound very good because it just sounds like we picked a random Korean guy off the street. He could have been homeless. We just had Rhett play against him. Now we're going to watch it. But actually, I figured if he can get to A, then he can get to A+. So bam! Now all of a sudden, Rhett is playing against an A+ level player, up in the drama, and it's our friendly neighborhood Rhett, who's been streaming on Team Liquid for so long and is one of the last bastions of hope of the foreign community out in South Korea. So yeah, really excited to do a little bit of watching of the Rhett. I've actually known Rhett for quite a long time. The first time I met him was at BlizzCon, where, you know, if you look at one of my previous Day 9 dailies, you got those hilarious photos of he and I. But I've been playing with him since probably about 2004, 2005 is when we played together quite a bit. And it's really funny because back then he really liked one-basing. One of his favorite styles of play was to open with 3 barracks and get a very, very fast +1 attack upgrade and do lots of really aggressive tactics with his medic marine stuff. So now that he, you know, in the recent year or so when he started to do a lot of his streaming and did his move to Korea, every time he plays Terran, it's really interesting to see that those little inklings of play that he used to do back then bleed into the way he plays now. So for instance, he does a lot of, he'll early expand, but he'll still get that very fast +1 attack upgrade, and when he moves out with his medic marine, he still uses a lot of those very aggressive tactics in his play, and that's what's really, really fun to see about how Rhett's play has changed throughout time. So yeah, and also a big lesson for all of you watching: never dismiss old plays. A lot of times, you know, you see a lot of these one-basing strategies as sort of completely fallen out of popularity. You don't see them at all anymore. But incorporating some of the techniques that you see there can definitely get you some strong play. So without further ado, let us transition right over with Fancy Dancy Procaster to this main screen kablamo. We have Neo Heartbreak Ridge. Basically, what Neo means is that, oh crap, there's a huge bug in the map, and we better fix that, but we want to make it sound fancy with the words Neo. So here, this is Neo Heartbreak Ridge, and this is the one thing that's different between Neo Heartbreak Ridge and the old Heartbreak Ridge. See these little patches right here that I continue to circle? These used to not be here. The spokes that connected to the center used to be this diagonal one and this diagonal one, but the straight ones had no connection. This was just rubble here. What's nice about having these here is it gives a little bit more mobility throughout the middle of the map, and you can do some cute things with tank pushing against Protoss, where you instead of taking your army around this way or around this way, you actually go up the middle because it's harder to get surrounded, and then you start setting your push up here and you move forward. We saw a little bit of that in Flash versus Stork, which we're going to take a look at tomorrow. So yeah, these are kind of the biggest things to note that are different about this new map. Unfortunately, we don't have any Protosses playing today, but we do have a Terran vs. Protoss between Rhett and his A+ level Korean opponent. So, again, the big features of this map are that it's pretty easy to take 3 bases. This one's, you know, a little bit tougher to take than it is on other maps, but the 4th gas is really the big deal, because Zerg, if he chooses to go here, yeah, he's closer to his left side of the map, but it's really hard to get to from ground. Likewise, if Zerg tends to take this one, it's very droppable. So we do tend to see Zergs taking this as their 4th gas a little bit more frequently, and they focus on a big defense on this main spoke. But again, because this is a little bit wider open, now you can't just defend this spoke and sort of prevent pushing up here. You both have to prevent pushing here, prevent this top, and prevent this little middle push here. It's a little bit easy because, you know, you can just throw 2 lurkers down here, but it's still an extra thing that you have to think about. A little bit of something that Zerg doesn't really want to have to deal with, but, you know, for map balancing purposes, it's obviously beneficial. So those are all the key features that I hope we get to see. I also have enabled the Storm plugin, so we're not actually going to get the opportunity to check out what the replay progress bar is, which is actually ideal, because I don't want anyone getting anything spoiled for them, because actually this is the first time I have watched this replay, and what's so great about this, by the way, for any of you who don't do this, just look at the minimap here. If you go Shift, Tab, Tab, it makes everyone red, and notice how it made red, and it made his opponent green. Do that in every single game. Get your eyes used to seeing one color. It's extremely helpful, especially if you're playing against like a brown player, because really, you can't even see that Overlord on the minimap right there. He is in-freaking-visible, and whoops, my scroll speed is kind of high. I'm going to have to rearrange my keyboard here a little bit with my mic, because I do like to use the keyboard when I'm watching replays to do these sorts of things. So yeah, we have the usual sorts of things going on. Workers being made. Always good to make workers at the start of the game. Don't want to skimp out on those. But of course I will spend time talking about important things. This Overlord Scout placement. This is great. See, if he's moving along this line, a lot of players like proxying with a barracks there. That kind of deals with that. I'm sure this second Overlord, when it pops out, will be scouting somewhere up here. Terran player doesn't necessarily need to scout too early, because we're already far apart. And, really, you don't want to get yourself too thrown off, since almost certainly you're going to do some sort of economic-oriented two-base play. There's some cute one-base plays that you can do, but I'll hopefully have time to discuss those at another date. Yeah, see, look, this Overlord going straight north, exactly the way you want to do it. 2 drones coming out to mess around with the SCV a little bit. And just an added note, if you get a few shots off with these drones against an SCV, send the other drone away. So, for instance, if you get that SCV down to 35, 30 hit points, you can just send this guy to scout, and this drone actually has the advantage over that SCV, and it's much easier to have one drone trying to build here, because if you have 2, the building drone has to dodge the other drone and the SCV. It's just a little bit easier. And see, look at this. I already like this sorts of things. Look, squeezing in an extra drone. Instead of doing the 11 pool, we have the 12 pool coming out. Very, very reasonable, very safe sort of thing to do. This sort of thing, just to think a little bit about, this is what I call double scouting. We have the drone already scouting here, and the Overlord's already scouting here, so is this an okay thing to do? I would argue yes, because the Overlord is really just trying to get in this position as fast as possible, but it is important to think about, am I doing a scout twice? For instance, when we were watching the D to C- replays, just take a look at this minimap down here. We had the Zerg player scouting with his Overlord in here to the Terran's main, and with a drone into the Terran's main, and that, I think, is an example of double scouting needlessly. In this case, we just have this Overlord really rushing to get in a good spot right here. So those are all sorts of little things to think about in the early game. For Terran, making sure that this SCV scouts along a good path, so that way it not only spots the drone that could have potentially been scouting, which is of course this drone right here, but also the Zerglings that are potentially coming out early. Also, if you send that SCV scout out and you see that there is in fact a drone right there, that allows you to immediately know that your opponent did in fact go for some sort of expand on 12. That seems to be about the right time to do that. And the usual sort of making drones after the pool stuff. Looks like we're going to be having a third hatch coming down here. Really like third hatch play on this map in particular. Just getting a lot of stuff. I personally just love 3 hatching a little bit more than I like 2 hatching. 2 hatching's fun because you get to be super aggressive, but I remember when StarCraft used to be about having fun. Now it's about winning. 3 hatching, for me, wins the games. A lot of players, I'm going to reveal the entire map for a little bit, a lot of players say, ooh, look how vulnerable this is. They have to build turrets behind here, so that way my Muta Harass is really good. That is true. Mutalisk Harass is good in a vacuum, right? If we just think about the area of this box, we go, yeah, Mutalisk Harass rapes in that box. But the problem is, when we start worrying about Marine movement here, I think the very first Day 9 daily was by hero against Flash, and Flash moved out with Medic Marine, and these Mutalisks didn't even have the opportunity to harass here. They had to pull all the way back to defend right there. All sorts of things that you need to think about. Not to think of things in vacuums. Try to make sure that anytime you're doing some harassment, consider a few things like, what if he counterattacks? Can he defend the harassment properly? Is anything else I'm doing vulnerable? All sorts of good things to think about. Good timing. By Rhett. Would have liked to see an Overlord a little bit earlier, just a smidgen earlier, because that does strike me as a little bit late. But hopefully we have some other buildings getting built to reduce the supply count. Now look at this A+ level Terran, this Pag Yi Sung And Richard Rorty, you can tell that guy speaks English. I'm not even going to try to pronounce that. But this friendly neighborhood A+ level Korean player, excellent placement here. Having these Marines right here, I wouldn't mind a bunker here. Placing a bunker here and then a depot there is a very effective wall off. You want to have that bunker touching right here, and you only need 2 or 3 Marines in that. But the rest of the Marines do in fact need to be cluttered right there. Very early academy. This would indicate to me that he wants to do some fancy magic with some fire bats and medics early on. I do not mind at all doing some sort of early pressure with 2 barracks, but because our opponent is not too hatching, I mind this a little bit less. If his opponent was 2 hatching, I really think you should get that second barracks up a little bit earlier, because we clearly see that you can do sorts of early pushes that can be quite a bit more effective than normal. Usual sort of good stuff, yeah, run around with that SCV, exactly what you want to be doing. To get vision of that as long as possible, you can make so many extreme decisions with that sort of thing. Yeah, good timing with the supply depots, and look at this, very, very, very early engineering bay. This looks a lot like Rhett. For some reason I paused to go, is this in fact Rhett playing Zerg against the Terran? Because that would have been really funny if I'd been doing it from the other way around, that there was in fact some Korean guy who said, yeah, I really like the name Richard Rorty. That really kind of speaks to who I am as a person. So hopefully I didn't screw that up. I'm pretty sure I'm not wrong on that, because again, Rhett versus A+ Korean Terran. That's the way the replay file was saved. So this is something that is nice about getting this very, very early academy. This is something that we saw a lot in 2007. 1 racks, early expand, ultra fast academy rush. When you get the academy that quickly, you get this range very quickly. Getting the range upgrade is a little bit underrated, I think. A lot of players know that it's good to get, but they don't quite acknowledge the extreme importance of it. Everything normal going on from Rhett. Looks like he's taking this expansion. I'll address this in just a little bit. But yes, the range is a little bit underrated, because range is unbelievably helpful against Mutalisks. A lot of players tend to get these barracks a little bit earlier, and though they do have a higher Marine count, the Marines are much easier to get picked off because they don't have range, and it ends up being a little bit less effective. Very, very standard tech pattern from this Terran player, and notice how close he's going to cut it with these turrets. No turrets built yet. A lot of Terran players like to build that turret a little bit early because they see that spire coming out and they think, well, yeah, I'm going to need turrets, may as well get them anyways. But this factory gets squeaked out a little bit earlier. Nothing gets interrupted with supply depots. We have these barracks coming out very early. All this is thanks to the fact that these turrets are delayed. Really, really, really got to wait a very, very long time. Now, if I'm Terran, these are the sorts of things I want to think about. I'm going to pause the game right now. So let's just look at what the Terran player has seen. So the Terran player has no idea what Richard Rorty, a.k.a. Rhett, is up to. All he knows is he's done a little bit of scouting in this main, and he's moving out with Medic Marine. Now notice this timing. We just see these turrets go down, and it seems magical, right? Because when we do get Rhett's vision, we note that the spire just popped. I mean, look at that. You even have the bits of brown from the animation of the spire still exploding, right? So right now, we do know that we have just finished the spire. What I would do is I would come back to my base and I would create some trigger. I would go, okay, when my when my factory is at 600 hit points, I should start building turrets. Or I can say, when I'm at a little past 45 food, I need to worry about getting turrets. When my comsats are close to finished, I need to worry about getting turrets. These are all these triggers that I want to establish for myself. So at this point, I don't have to have done any scouting to know exactly when those Mutalisks are coming out. And this, again, is exactly how you get called a hacker. You get called a hacker because, ooh, that's not fair, you know? Like, right when my spire finished, you started making turrets. Hacker, 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 hacker. I actually am going to pause this game a little bit because I saw that scan and I'm really curious where it went off. This is a really important part to scan because a lot of Zerg players always build their extra unit right here, so I don't mind that. And just this little movement forward with these Marines force Rhett to build these 2 extra sunken colonies. Love it. Absolutely love it. Super duper duper, duper duper good play by both sides. Rhett's doing the very, very normal standard sort of thing. Rhett also likes this timing where he gets his Hydralisk Den and his Evolution Chamber at the exact same time. Completely good timing to do. Notice how that when I say things like that, you know, it makes it easy to create the timing for yourself. When I do this economic-oriented play, I'm getting both these things at the exact same time, and that's it. I'm done with it. And by the way, let's say you did use that timing where you build the, you know, evolution chamber and the lurkers at the exact same time. Let's say for some reason you say to yourself, I didn't really need that upgrade that early, and I felt a little bit low on units. Now I know the exact adjustment I need to make in my play, right? I need to get the evolution chamber a little bit later. I might start it not when my Hydralisk Den begins, but when my lurker upgrade begins, or my lurker upgrade's halfway done. Because that way, I'm still getting the upgrade right when I need to. I'm not getting it too early, and I can build those extra units. Again, anytime we declare what our timings are, and we perceive some sort of inefficiency in our play, we know the exact sort of adjustments we need to make. Good placement by this Terran player. This is, you know, the exact bunker placement that if you're worried about dying early game that you should do, because this Comsat blocks a little bit of the attacking sides from the Zerglings and keeps a big, fat repair side for the rest of your stuff. It also makes this a very narrow choke. All these make it very good placement. Oh, and look at this incredible placement by the Terran, stopping these Mutals before they even do anything at all. Now, I did say that I was going to come down here and talk about this, so I will. The reason we like this expansion, as opposed to this one in particular, is that with this expansion, first of all, thinking of what units we have Mutalisks. Here's a narrow choke. We're getting a lot of Mutalisks out. We can stop these guys. We can micro around on these spokes. We can get in some battles along these chokes, and we have one last choke that will help us defend it. Also, since we're getting lurkers at about this normal time, hey, look, there's the Evo Chamber and the Hydra Den coming down simultaneously. When we have the lurkers coming out, we just need to build 2 Hydras here, block this, and then I almost said boom, but I forgot that I'm now saying deflam! We immediately have lurkers there defending. Fantastic. And if we can get this thing defended earlier, we already know that we are going to get this expansion, right? This is our second natural, or our third base. It's very, very easy to take. As an exaggerated example, let's say we're Zerg, and instead of expanding here first, we expand here first. If we can defend this and our main, we already know that this natural is going to be easy to defend, so we know that we can get 3 gases very easily. In this case, since we're taking this as our third, and we know we can take this very easily, we can get 4 gases pretty easily if we take that bottom right. Little things to think about with the decision making. Now with Terran, this starport did get a little bit delayed, just a smidge, just a mush delayed thanks to this Mutalisk harass, but that's fine. We like to think that if we didn't get harassed so effectively, if we didn't have to build all these turrets, we would have gotten this turret out, or excuse me, this science facility out and our starport out a little bit earlier. Everything's fine from the Terran point of view. Again, he's setting himself up so he can take advantage of things if they crop up, right? If the harassment doesn't end up coming or is very ineffective, this can come out super early. But all this is thanks to getting that very, very early factory. And already we have tanks being produced. And I just want to point out to a lot of players who do this style as Terran, this is like the most normal thing in the world we're seeing from this player. I mean, right as we're getting the starport add-on, we're getting the refinery, so we can start really getting a whole ton of upgrades, and we can start getting those vessels out early. Very good timing with these supply depots. You start needing to build 2 supply depots at once instead of 1 supply depot at once. And right when you're getting that science facility is when you're going to be adding on a 4th, sometimes a 5th barracks. One thing I would criticize about this Terran player at this point is that I don't think these supply depots should be here. They should either come up like this or end up being back here, because right now we want to have space to build barracks here, here, and here. Obviously there's going to be one that fits in there, but we would like to have some extra space to build them because that makes macro easier. If we have to do something like wrap around here and then start a line of barracks up there, that can be a little bit of a pain in the ass. Yeah, see, here comes this 4th barracks coming down now. Another science facility. Sometimes you want to plan where that science facility pops out, because this, I mean, look at this. Look at this big spike of black here. Mutas are going to kill the shit out of that SCV. And we like to keep him alive. He's our buddy. Rhett doing the very good Mutalisk harassment right here. And this is what I love about doing high-level replays, is that we actually have the opportunity to pause a whole bunch and look around the map. So here we're going to be getting these Hydralisks coming out here. Look at this beautiful timing. Would have liked maybe a smidge earlier. Just I'm making up measurements all the time now. A bush, a smidge. Yeah, just a little bit, just a tiny mutton out earlier, right? Just get a little bit earlier because then we can get 2 lurkers right away. It's not so bad because Rhett clearly looked at his situation and said, "Oh yeah, I'm in no desperate hurry to get these lurkers, but it is something that's useful to get." And notice, Rhett, everything else he's doing is normal, right? Everything else, getting the layer now, is going to be getting a 5th hatch in a little bit. Terran player is probably a little confused. We just heard a scan go off. I am in fact going to take vision off Richard Rorty, and yeah, he does in fact see the expansion. And this is when Terran players are just like, "Ah!" And they freak out and make sounds that are a lot like a Mutalisk or a Scourge. And that really shows the importance of scouting, because you should never assume your opponent's always going to take these expansions, because if you've played 10, 100, million, thousand games of StarCraft like I have, you're never ever surprised the fact that there will be some Zerg player who says, "Oh yeah, my standard is to take the center early on." You need to be prepared for pretty much anything. And just doing a little bit of extra stuff, like having this Firebat do this little run around, having that SCV that just died do a little run around, that's very, very beneficial. Super good, highly awesome. So we see more of the usual timing. Would have liked a slightly better building placement. We worry about having a little bit of clogging here, because when drops inevitably happen here at the end game, we don't want to have all our units unable to access back here, but not so bad, not so bad. Good placement to have all the unit producing structures at the front, all the not unit producing structures at the back. Again, I still would have liked these guys elsewhere. And here comes the most normal push in the world. This is the standard timing. Any game you play of StarCraft, you should be prepared to deal with this sort of timing. Look at it. 5th hatch going down. Exactly the right look. Going to be adding on another evolution chamber in just a little bit here. Beautiful placement. Actually would have liked these lurkers burrowed on top of each other, and would like an overlord floating over these lurkers. You can actually just right-click the overlord to move, and it covers it perfectly. So that way it kind of helps to deal with any sort of irradiates going on. It's very hard to target fire them. Aren't I smart? Did you just hear that? Oh yeah, tactical overlord usage. You're like, "Overlord, cover up that lurker," and your overlord's like, "Bleh!" And you're like, "Yeah, cover it up," and he's like, "Bleh!" Man, I make the sickest overlord noises. And they always agree. They're always very helpful guys. Loving the overlords. And see, this is why the Mutalisks with lurker combo is very good, because if there were no Mutalisks here, you wouldn't have to siege the tanks to push. But because there's Mutalisks here, you can get the tanks that are at the front in range. So, a little bit of things to think about. And see, now we get to just inch back, just push a few centimeters, or inches if you're from America. Just edge a little bit back, and now the tanks have to re-siege. So right now, this is the technique you need to know how to do. How do I delay this mid-game push? 2 hatching players are harassing the Terran to death in his main, so in a sense, this push comes out really, really late. When you do this 3-hatch style, the push comes out at about the time that the Terran player wants it to, but you do tactical delays like this, with lurker burrowing and unburrowing in the Mutalisk micro. See this time, 11 minutes? Pushes generally happen between 9 minutes and 30 seconds to 10 minutes and 30 seconds. That's when that first vessel pops out and gets ready to move out. So you really need to be aware of exactly that timing. And see, here's that guaranteed 4th gas that we were mentioning earlier. Very easy to defend. Would like maybe an extra sunken colony here, maybe an extra lurker, and definitely a spore colony up there. It's going to be really, make it virtually impossible to break. I'm always terrified when it's just 2 lurkers, because sometimes you lose one of them, and then he just runs in with a bazillion Medic Marine, and even if you do throw a swarm in time, like if he kills this one and you swarm this one, the Medic Marine just run over here and do a lot of damage, even if it does end up getting killed off. So right now we're starting to see what's so great about this expansion right now. See, first of all, if we just look at the map, check this out. Coming down to this bottom right here means that the main, the natural, and this top are completely defended. Also very good by Rhett. Look at this Overlord placement. Aware of drops, aware of troop movement up here. Does need Scourge there. That's pretty important. We see that if the Terran player does go here, or goes up here, this is still vulnerable to drops right here. But now we have a counterattack, and exactly the sort of stuff you want to be doing in the mid-game. Oh yeah, ooh, loving this Terran. He truly is an A+ level player, right? We transition to having a bunch of barracks. There should be a second starport. Yeah, I would have liked that a little bit earlier. Just a touch earlier. But then we don't want this factory to be useless to us. We don't want this factory to go from producing tanks to producing nothing. So instead we're going to start making mines. Standardist transition in the world. Because again, mines against an entirely ground army without range, incredibly good. Look at that. Putting the hurt on. Ugh. I think I just heard Rhett's neck snap all the way from here in California. Not a good spot to be in. Rhett, though, still has excellent defense. We do want to have these sorts of counterattacks here. And I would never, ever want anyone to think that these sorts of counterattacks are bad. These kind of counterattacks are critical. And see, these sorts of run-ins are a bit of a danger, especially if you don't quite have that many lurkers. We're going to need to have more units popping in there, but see, any sort of run-by like this is problematic. So this is why I'm glad it's a replay, is that I get to bounce back and forth between these two areas. This is fundamental to Zerg mid-game play. And I would call this 9 hit points. Strong play, Rhett. Super duper strong. This sort of counterattack play is fundamental, right? Because Defilers, I'm going to say this, and I'm going to repeat it as many times as possible. Defilers are best in direct defense, like if he's at your front and you want him to not run in and kill you, like what we just saw here, or with direct offense, where Defilers struggle are when Terran has a really big wide open middle to maneuver around, and it's hard to just really edge forward in there, right? Consequently, we want to get in positions that can take advantage of that. They're so good in direct offense because if we're at the Terran's front door, which is what I call direct offense, Terrans suddenly can't run back. They can't maneuver anywhere. They just have to take it. Their expansion dies. And that is the sort of stuff that we want to create for our Defilers, which is why on Heartbreak Ridge in particular, if we go back to the main screen, if we look here on Heartbreak Ridge, why Zerg really likes getting Defilers, or really likes the standard sort of mid-game setup of Defilers and Lurkers and Lings, because no matter where Terran's pushing, whether it be this lane, or in this newly created fancy center lane, there's always a quick, easy path for Defilers and Lurkers to do some sort of push at the front here. As a result, Terran really does need to get mines so a little bit earlier. And again, part of the reason why I freaked out and was just like, you know, I turned into a velociraptor when I got to see this sort of stuff happen. Excellent, excellent, excellent play. And see, ideally don't want to get in this spot where you have a 14 hit point Nidus Canal and you're starting to really throw down have to throw down a bunch more sunken colonies. You only have 2 lurkers here. Really need to set that up. And also be conscientious of this, that sometimes you'll advance these lurkers for a swarm. You definitely need to pull them back. Because if these get caught off guard, if the swarm's just a second late, all these guys evaporate. I also do not mind getting a Nidus Canal here as well. A lot of players won't, because they'll just go, oh yeah, look, I can just take this path, and then I'm right here at this expansion. Because Terran has such incredible mobility at this stage in the game, I think it's essential to start Nidusing things together. And especially because you get a little bit of a mineral buildup here. Absolutely nothing wrong about getting an extra Nidus Canal there. Or even an extra hatchery at this stage to start really producing extra Zerglings. Rhett's doing a pretty good job of keeping his money down, but still would have liked some creative way to spend that money. These sorts of attacks really pinning the Terran player back. And especially if you can do these counterattacks right around the time that your Terran player is trying to get a second starport, because that will allow you to, I guess, swarm through the irradiate. You don't have to worry too much about having every single one of your offensive units being irradiated to death here. Nothing wrong with eventually getting Overlord speed. That's very, very helpful at some point. And now I really want to illustrate how important it is to have good foresight with your building placement. We can probably squeeze 2 barracks in there. That third one might get pinched off by that extra thing here. But then where do you build your extra barracks? You're going to have to go up here and then work your way up there. That's ugly. We don't want that. We would have ideally liked these supply depots not to be here, so that way we could build as efficiently as possible. I'm going to try to start stopping a little bit less, because we've been going for 30 minutes, even though we've been watching the replay for 14. Yeah, I mean, that's the sort of thing you really need to try to avoid. It's good to go in there and scourge the vessels, but being very careful to pull them back. A great way to prevent that from happening is to always have your scourge have a unique hotkey, right? You can have all your scourge set to 0, or all your scourge set to 4. Uh-oh. Obviously don't do that, but that's, you know, clearly a mistake, so... And see, now we're starting to see why I emphasize getting that Nidus Canal so much, is because even though we're really, really close, and we can throw down some swarms here, just if 2 or 3 Marines even get by here, they can wreak havoc on all these drones. This is very unfortunate to be in this sort of situation. But yeah, making sure your Scourge are in a unique hotkey group so you can really take out those vessels are very helpful. See, look at this. This thing's going to fall, and we just really don't want to have that. As Zerg, we took this early, so that way we'd be guaranteed to have this. We don't want to have this die so much. And honestly, in Rhett's defense, if you do take this place first, and then you end up taking this place next, it's very easy to let this kind of thing happen. Oh yeah, look at Rhett spending his money. Ah, damn, Rhett has such good macro. Because imagine for a moment if we're playing normal Zerg vs. Terran, right? Where we do this style of play, we get the 5 hatches, and we go Defiler, Lurker, Ling, but instead this is our third, and this is not. If this is our third, we're used to this being incredibly well defended. We're used to this, you know, having Sunkens, Lurkers, Defilers. We're used to defending this with ease. But when we take this with a 4th, this suddenly is the hard place to defend, and that mentally sometimes doesn't register when you're doing this style change, which is why, again, it's very easy for it to fall if you're not treating it like a 4th base, right? If you're not treating it as though you're expanding up here. Oh yeah, and Red is continuing to expand here and ended up dying, and we see that it popped there instead of getting canceled, so, you know, we'd prefer to have that sort of thing, not happen, but I do like the fact that Red is continuing to expand aggressively around the map. So now Zerg, this is what's sort of interesting, is that a lot of players would go, oh man, Terran's at the advantage because he killed this off. This is actually more of an even game. Rhett was at a pretty significant advantage, having secured this so early, and then having, gone to take this 4th pretty early as well. So this is what I would call an even game. There was a game like this between Hwasun and I think it was Zero on this map, that it looked dramatic because, Zero had expanded here, and then Hwasun ended up killing off this 4th, and everyone was like, whoa, Hwasun's at a huge advantage, but really it was more like Hwasun had evened the game out. And either way, I'm disappointed that Hwasun lost, because I love him, he's so cool. And he has cool red glasses, which matches this Zerg player. Ah. I just want to briefly mention that Mutalisks tend to lose their effectiveness as the game progresses. Which is why I do like a lot of Guardian transitions to make those Mutalisks useful. Jesus, I just realized I am screaming. Let me just touch this down a nod. There we go. Oh my god, I was like screaming into the microphone. I looked at the mic and it was like glistening in my saliva. So I'm going to go ahead and tone that down just a noodle, just a pinch of a hint down a little bit. So yeah, good macro by Rhett. That's definitely one of Rhett's strongest points. He never has these sort of idle larvae hanging out. Would have liked to see, you know, a little bit better macro down there. But of course, I'm a macro hound. I'm always like, macro! And Terran has been hanging out at 1,000 for quite some time. If he had room to build extra barracks, he wouldn't have to deal with that sort of thing. I mean, anytime your money's at 1,000 for that long, you really need to start thinking of ways to prevent that from ever happening. Don't think, what in the moment can I spend this money on? You know, we need to think, oh, right now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 barracks. I guess I can get up to 8 barracks, or maybe 9 barracks. These are the sorts of adjustments you should make. Don't do something ambiguous like, I need to be better. You know, you want to do something specific like, I will get 9 barracks instead of 7. That sort of specificity is going to help so much. And look, if we had a Nidus Canal here, we'd have a much easier time. This is the sort of run-by we don't want to worry about so much. Now, if I'm Zerg and I lost this game, I wouldn't be that concerned with my play. I would mainly think to myself, yeah, I really should get a Nidus. That would be the small, tiny adjustment that I would make. And then I would try this identical play again. Look how low that money is. What a serious pro. What an esteemed Eastro pro gamer we have on our hands. Obviously, got to make sure that you keep those upgradings pooping out. Want to have those going as smoothly as possible. But based on this timing, it could have only just barely finished. No Defiler down here. Ooh, very dangerous situation. This expansion is very vulnerable right now. No Defiler in sight. I mean, we're obviously going to have some here, but because these Lurkers are there and not there, this is a vulnerable expansion. If we back those up, we're in good shape once again. And I still don't mind having a Sunk and then a Spore there. Excellent way to really secure those expansions. Because I want to pause for a minute. Because I was talking about, hey, this is easily defendable early game, but let's think about this expansion late game. Late game, we're obviously going to have a pretty good control over our top of the map as Zerg, right? We can pretty much just send swarms this direction and secure these two places. But if we have this one as well, suddenly Terran is never going to be able to expand here. So basically, we've limited our Terran player to these 3 bases. Thinking long term, this is an excellent thing to have in the late game. Absolutely incredibly useful thing to have in the late game. This is where we start having a little bit of Danger Town USA, is when, Danger Town, Holland and South Korea, is when we start getting this critical vessel count, and really, because it's so hard to get 4th gases, look, we're starting to run the risk of depleting these really soon, and we're going to be on 2 gases for quite some time. In July vs. Flash on this map, Flash basically just held the middle and starved the Zerg, July, until July pretty much had no more gas. Plague! That might have been one of the few situations where I would have opted for a Plague over a Dark Swarm. The Dark Swarms pretty much can never be bad, but honestly, really, if there's any doubt in your mind, definitely throw the Swarm. The Swarm cannot ever be bad. But that's one of the situations where it was so packed and tight, I almost had an erection at the potential of a Plague being thrown down on that big glob. And plus, you maybe could have gotten some vessels too. But really, finding ways to keep that vessel count low, because look, here's just a little bit of disorganization. It's surprising that those Scourge managed to get those vessels out. Really, we would have wanted those Scourge out already for when that push was happening right here to kill those things off. But this is unbelievably good by this Terran player to have all his engineering bays and even the science facility floating out here. If you have an engineering bay here and a science facility here or vice versa, you can have a really strong grip on that center of the map. So here's the later game transition for Terran. I would say for late game we end up transitioning to the 2 starport vessel and to the mines. But then even later on we end up back-teching to tanks, because we need more muscle in addition to all this mobility. So right now, good position to be in is Zerg. We have 4 base against pretty much 1 base right now. But now we're starting to run low on gas. So as Zerg, we need to either be taking this and really extending our mineral advantage with just some spores and some lurkers and some defilers here to secure this base. Another good technique is to get drop just 8 Zerglings here, because if you just rip through 3 or 4 of these, which is going to happen super fast, you are slowly pulling ahead. And it's a pretty low commitment, you know, because we have all this extra minerals running around anyways. These are the counterattacks that are essential and are much stronger if we can get just a defiler and 2 lurkers over there. Counterattacking from start to finish are how you really abuse Terran, and why Terran needs to have such a mobile army. Ooh, yeah, good Plague getting off. Wouldn't have minded a Plague there either. And also, do that. I was going to say, you know, if you haven't gotten this, you know, plus 50 energy upgrade, plus energy upgrades I think are a little bit underrated. They're a little bit hard to see, you know, because if a player does something, you know, I mean, let's be honest, if a player gets Maelstrom, you're going to see the Maelstrom. You're going to be like, oh, maybe I should get Maelstrom. But if the player gets the energy upgrade in a pro match, it's kind of tough to see. So I will tell you, it is okay. I endorse getting the plus 50 upgrade for defilers, because then you have a swarm and a plague. And remember, swarms can never be bad. If you throw them down instantly, you're not going to die right now. But then you can have an extra plague to sort of throw down there. You don't have to make the choice between, do I plague and swarm? Or, excuse me, do I plague and not swarm? Or do I swarm and not plague? Your decision becomes a little bit easier. This is a little bit dangerous. I've seen several times Rhett has Ultralists going out naked. That's Ultralists with a Defiler, but no Zerglings. We really love our Zerglings. Zerglings are what actually deal the damage. Zerglings deal damage more quickly than Ultralists. Ultralists are beastly and, you know, deal a ton of damage, but more importantly, they take a lot of damage. See, Swarms cannot be bad. Right now, we have secured this spoke. But see, with this increase in tanks, we suddenly need to just have more stuff as Zerg. And Zerg continuing to expand here. Anytime you're expanding here, just have the Nidus ready. Just expand and build the Nidus. So that way when it pops up, you can go and just poop it down immediately. That word's so funny. Yeah, Mutoriska! Taking things out. That is my best impersonation of those Korean commentators, is just to add like 15 syllables to everything. Instead of blade, you say something like buredu. So, Yeah, just something to think about. Just, on my my push to have more people talk the way I do. So we have another swarm coming down. This is the key way to take out more vessels, is to have 12 Zerglings run in, have a swarm, and just to do a few snipes before you back off. It's unfortunate that Rhett ended up losing that. But yeah, see, we're starting to see the dire situation. We have our friendly neighborhood Pagya Sung versus Richard Rorty. I wish all Koreans had that sort of name because it would be much easier to pronounce. But yeah, this expansion now is kind of out of the question for Terran. Terran really needs to focus on killing this thing off, which he is. And hey, wouldn't it have been great to have like a Nidus Canal there? Honest mistake, not the biggest deal, but we'd like to be able to secure this expansion. But Terran's now looking like he has to expand here. A little bit of disorganization. No reason to confront this without Swarm. Really, this is kind of sacking units, and I think that a lot of this is indicative of this later game disorganization. See, look at this. This is a limbo line. If all those units attacked simultaneously, for instance, if Red had pulled his units back here and then regrouped all those Zerglings up here, he could have done a big crunch right here. Would have been very difficult for the Terran player to deal with that. I mean, it's easy with Lurker Link to do this sort of mistake, but, having these sorts of issues happen and basically having an unbelievable amount of patience is very helpful start to finish. Hogel, I think in particular, is very good at having this outrageous level of patience. And now we do see Rhett taking it out, but I think he could have taken it out even harder had he just had slightly, ever so inchingly more patience. Just a moo of additional patience there, I think, would have been fantastic. So yeah, and it's unfortunate that this thing keeps falling. I really would commend the Terran player for that timing there. He had this big push up here. He had units moving through here, and I'm just going to go to this bit of blackness. That way we can look at the mini-map. This is really the only place where Scourge could have come in to kill this dropship. The attack up here pretty much defended this drop and ensured its success. So excellent tactical maneuver by the Terran there. This is where we start having a little bit of a tough situation for the Zerg player, because really, if you have one gas with hopefully 3 guys in it, 2 guys probably you'll have a little bit of trouble. But notice this gas buildup. Once you're done upgrading and you have all your upgrades out, you can pretty much support 2 starports worth of things just from 1 geyser that's running and 2 not running geysers. Zerg, on the other hand, is really low on gas and wants to have a lot of Scourge, Ultralists, and Defilers. So it's at this stage of the game, when Zerg doesn't have, all that many gas running, that Zerg starts to, getting a little bit scared. Because the Terran can, in fact, do this thing where he just sends stuff out. Oops, would have liked these Scourge to split up and hurt those guys a little bit harder. I'm going to inch forward just a little bit and do a little ×2. We do see we see our friendly neighborhood, Richard Rorty Rhett, taking out this expansion. Or taking this expansion, and see, I still think a Nidus should be built here. Niduses are always helpful, pretty much. I want to say that there is in fact no Defiler there. A little surprising this is going to be that effective. Counterattacks, absolutely essential, and especially easy when you have this bottom expansion. But, if there's a Defiler that ends up being incorporated into that mix, it's going to be all the more effective. So now we're starting to see that Zerg clearly is very close to winning. 50 food, no running, expansion for Terran. Looks like it's going to be a pretty clean finish for Rhett here. Oh yeah, plaguing it, bam! Seriously, those Ultras are just pounding those guys into the ground. Yeah, good game. Richard Rorty ends up securing the victory, and I like that game quite a bit. I'm going to go ahead and rearrange my laptop. Or not my laptop, my keyboard. Oh man, I would never want to do this commentary on a laptop, but yeah, I really like that game from Rhett. It really shows the power of having taken that bottom right expansion. Because he did that, he had the opportunity to take his top right with so much more ease. And first of all, I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. I've surpassed 600 viewers. I think that's the first time I've ever done that on a Day 9 Daily. So big heart to everyone, and I'm glad that we got to do it on Rhett's game, on the historic Dutch player Rhett. So, yeah, I think that was excellent play by Rhett. And still, what's so great is that Rhett is like an A+ level Zerg player, and we still clearly see that there are a few tweaks he can do. And that's not to be like, oh yeah, Rhett, you're bad or something like that. That's to say, oh my god, awesome. Rhett still has ways to improve so that he can get that Olympic rank oh so easily, right? These are all the little sorts of things that we like to look at when we check out our own games, too, so that way we can be Rhett-like and be super, super good. So now I'm going to do a little bit of question and answer sessioning. So Hart says, Mr. Nine. I like the way you address me. I would prefer Professor Nine, though. Yeah. So Hart says, I'm a D-level Terran player. I'm pretty bad, but I have this recurring problem with my supply depot timing, and in fact my timing of food on any race past 60. I was wondering when's the proper time to get a depot. So first of all, I would say that it's most important just to listen to my chair. See, I am a professor, right? I have my creaky oak chair that I sit with my monocle and go, StarCraft, and I analyze stuff. But this is what Professor Day 9 says. You should know when all the timings are in the top right corner. So what I would say is that if you're having trouble, that probably means that you're focusing too much on the main screen and less on the top right corner and the bottom left corner, which is the mini-map. Those are really where 90% of your focus should be in any game. So there's two things that I would do to change that. First of all, write down exactly when your timings are. So, for instance, let's say you don't even know the timings, but, let's say on 61 of 68 food, I am going to build a damn supply depot. And if it's too early, you just make a note of that. Like, keep a notepad next to your computer. So just go, oh, yeah, I need to adjust that. And when you, do a little bit of adjustment on there, when you do just an oofle of adjustment on that, you'll start to see, that things are getting cleaned up. Another thing that would be useful, if you're still having trouble with that, is try to find the point where you have one SCV constantly making supply depots. And then as time progresses, you're going to have two SCVs constantly making supply depots. Very, very easy sort of thing to do, and that's actually what I do as Terran. I just eventually know that, okay, around this time I need to start constantly making with this SCV, and I kind of keep an eye on him. And then occasionally I'll have an extra guy go up there, but, that's about it. So that's, I think, the easiest thing to do there. Let's see here. So I like this question by Low Limit. Low Limit says, Professor Day 9. Oh, thank you. I'm a D+ level Terran, and I have difficult time transitioning from mid to late game. What is an objective Terran should have during the mid to late game? Obviously, the usual sorts of transitions, unit-wise, to having the 2 starports, making lots of science vessels, getting the mines, getting like 8 to 9 barracks late in the game. Having a 3rd base, these are all the normal sorts of things. But I think the most important and most overlooked thing is to just have really good mid-game control. Make sure that you are closer to his side than you are to yours. So let's actually go take a fast ninja-esque look at this mini-map. If we look here, let's say you're Terran and you spawn here. It's really easy to, move up here, and then there's a push with the filers, and you come all the way back here. But notice that you're really spending time on this third of the map. You want to figure out some way to kill this defiler push while still having your units doing a lot of pressure here. So I would say focusing a lot on pressuring and macroing are probably going to be your 2 best friends in this situation. So yeah. String Tape says, I was wondering when to make an expansion. I was wondering when to make an expansion. When do you do a 2-factory build? String Tape, I'm a little bit confused on that question, so if you could just reword it, I'll definitely come back to it. Blade says, as a C-Zerg player, when is it good timing to get a 4th? Depends a little bit on what you're doing. Generally, once you get the 5 hatches up and you're going Ling, Lurker, Defiler, you should just be thinking, time to get a 4th. And everything you do should be geared towards getting a 4th. Wish I had destination loaded, but you want to be getting a 4th and you want to be doing some sort of pressure. So basically the simultaneous super defense holding everything off and the counter pressure I think is very, very important to do. And again, String Tape, if you could just reword that question and just paste it a few times just to make sure I end up hitting it properly. I'm going to go ahead and mute the chat in just a little bit. Ret Fan says, Professor Day 9, is it absolutely necessary to delay the Terran's mid-game push to get defilers out in time? I'm going to mute the chat right now. Really, for Zerg, the big focus of your gameplay is delaying that 3rd push. You don't have to be getting defilers. I like doing Lurker, Defiler, and then Ling. Ling, Lurker, Defiler. 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 Hydra sometimes, just having a big army to kill it off. But what you want to do is you want to delay it until you can finally kill it. So whether that be with a bunch of units or whether that be with a defiler, that's, either one's totally appropriate. But just make sure that there is some sort of delay going on, because delaying can only help, really. Oh god, I'm going to mispronounce this. Auriouk, Auriouk says, Overlord drops have proven to be very strong on Heartbreak Ridge. When is the best time to do drops in the main? I definitely think around the time when you're really securing your 4th, but more importantly when the Terran has 3 bases. And the Terran's worried about defending those 3 bases, and the only way he really can is to have a lot of mid-game control, or in other words, a lot of units not in his main. Just doing a little cute drop with 8 Zerglings I think is very effective. I think that's a great time to do it. So I really want to see if String Tape reposted his question. He still has not, so that's fine. I just really wanted to get back to that, so hopefully... Oh yeah, here we go. String Tape says, while you do a 2-factory build, what supply can you afford to make an expansion? I think a better way to ask that question is not so much what the supply should be, but kind of depending on what your game plan is. A lot of times there's 2-factory builds that are like... I'm going to do Vulture Harassment early on, and then when I expand, I have Goliath to hold off Mutalisk Harassment. But the Vulture Harass is supposed to screw them up economically. Sometimes you'll be doing a 2-factory build that is like tanks and vultures, which is also an unbelievably good thing to do. But that's generally geared towards doing a ton of damage to the Zerg, if not killing him early on. So I would just say when you can. If you go Vultures, you'll be able to get it much earlier. If you even open up with like 2 or 3 factory Goliath, which is actually an understandable opening, it's going to be a little bit later. But do it when you can, and most importantly, when you can defend it from those counterattacks. So those are sort of things to think about. So Colossus says, I'm Zerg. After I secure 2 expansions and need to take a 4th base, I don't have any F keys left, and I often forget to macro at my 4th because of this. What hotkeys do you use for your bases? Ha! I love the fact that I have a replay open so I get to show you guys. Okay, so for those of you who didn't know this, you can actually hotkey bases in replays. So here, forgot to go to the main screen. Let me go back over here. So let me go up here. So I'm going to go ahead and hotkey these things as F4, F2, and F3. So naturally I have the F2, F3, and F4. And here's what I do for this bottom right base here. I don't know if a lot of people know this, but okay, so if I hold the middle mouse button, that is my mouse wheel, if I hold it down, watch what happens. So I'm holding it, notice that my mouse cursor disappeared. You see it here? You see I'm wiggling around my mouse cursor, I'm going to hold it and it's going to disappear. And if I move a little bit to the left and right, look how fast it's moving the screen. See, look, and I release, I haven't changed my position here, but if I hold that middle mouse button, I can move very quickly. So how do I get to that bottom expansion? I hold the center mouse button and whip my mouse very quickly down and right, and then I'm here. Let's say I've expanded to the top left. How do I move there very quickly? Hold the middle mouse button, bam, I'm at the top left. Bam, bottom left, top left, and then F2, F3, F4, bottom right, top left, bottom right, top left. See? And I'm just using the middle mouse button, and I can do this very, very quickly. So, if I have some drones, I can select them and then just send them right down here. If I want to send stuff up to this top place, I can do that. It's really, 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 really easy to do, and an excellent, excellent technique. So I'm glad that you brought that up. Really, really awesome thing to do. So here's a good question, and I have time for just a few more questions. And I hope I pronounce these names right. People have some really abstract names going on here. I'm actually going to mute it so I can do this just right. So yeah, oops, there were so many spawning. Taku Desu says, Day 9, I noticed that Red is always low on money with 4 to 5 hatches, but I can't do the same. Am I not macroing enough? Or making too many drones? I would almost certainly say that macro is the main focus that you should look at. Like, am I just 5 SZ, 6 SZ, 7 SZ? Because when you watch Rhett play, even on his live stream, you really see that he is macroing the shit out of those hatcheries. He's unbelievably good at that. Also, another thing that might be happening is you might be getting the upgrades a little bit later. I think that is one of the key things that a lot of players miss out on, is not getting their second evolution chamber upgrading quickly enough. Because once you have all those upgrades going, you suddenly realize that you don't have any money left, and you're able to macro really well. a lot of times what happens also that when you stop upgrading, players tend not to add on extra hatches then. Terran players are good at adding on extra barracks after both their engineering bays have finished making stuff, but a lot of times players are not so good at adding on the extra hatches. That's also, on the reverse side once you get past that. So I'm going to go ahead and finish taking questions right now. Thank you for your submissions, but yes, we want to make sure that we do not end up flooding the chat for the end game announcements. So I'm going to take this bright blue question from After 7 Days, who says, Rhett lost his first courage game by losing key buildings from a drop. If we assume we cannot have perfect Scourge defense, is there a way to minimize damage ahead of time? The answer is, have perfect control with your drop. I actually have these outrageous timings for when I look at the minimap. When I'm microing Mutalisks, every time I hit hold position and do a swipe, when I click move back with the Mutalisks, glance at the minimap. Just look down. I don't quite do this head motion. I don't like, whoa, but I just glance down at the minimap. Just that sort of thing, like all the time. You really need to make sure you set these sorts of things up. So for instance, anytime I'm macroing 5SZ, 7XZ, 6SZ, I'm staring at the minimap because I actually don't even need to be looking at the main screen when I'm doing that sort of macro. And also, anytime I'm under an attack, I focus extra hard on the minimap because I know that dropping is the most effective time. That in the middle of attack is the most effective time for dropping. So we're just going to take one last question, the bright purple question from Friendly Neighborhood Baird, who sent me a heart before the cast, so I have to answer his question. Baird says, like any D-level player, I have a tremendous amount of trouble remembering to macro. I'll be in scenarios where I'm like, oh yeah, I dodged that storm, and then I realize I haven't made a single unit in like 30 seconds. Do you have any helpful conditional reminders to improve macro? Listening really carefully to sound effects. I'm always shocked when people say, oh yeah, I practice without sound effects, because then I get better at looking at the minimap. And for me, I macro with the sound effects. So if I turn off the sound effects, I suddenly just go to shit. Right? I just suddenly get no guys. So if you really train yourself to listen very, very carefully, July's actually excellent at that. If you watch his first-person VODs, he only makes units from his hatcheries right when his other units have just finished. He's superb at that sort of timing. So I really, really like July as an example there. So using that sort of timing is excellent. And also, what I did initially before I started using sound a lot is I just spammed just all the time. Just 5SZ, 6SZ, 7SZ. And I just trained my fingers to always be spamming. And I focused really hard on doing that all game long. So just make sure you're constantly spamming. Yeah, I'll sometimes tell a hatchery to build when it doesn't have any larvae, but, whatever. I still have no larvae at any hatchery. So I think that is going to sum up the Day 9 Daily number 31. Bammo! And again, my schedule is much freer this week, so I'm doing the OSL casts on Wednesday and Friday, so please tune in, please. Also, my game has been posted on TeamLiquid.net under the thread title Play My Game. Would just love it if you guys continue to play and did some more awesome speed runs, such as 4 Always. Would love that sort of stuff to go on. I guess thanks so much for viewing. Hit 600 viewers this time. Woo! Hoping to hit 1K viewers solid every time. Bam! And thanks so much, everyone. Cheers!